This video is sponsored by practicalscreenwriting.com.
I tried to draw as much from real-life observation as possible. I had got involved with a long running argument, a good-natured argument, but still an argument with a neuroscientist friend of mine who comes from that very respectable position that exists within theory of mind about humans, but also AI research, which basically says machines are never going to be conscious. There's something particular about human consciousness that hasn't been understood yet, and when we do understand it, we will see why machines are precluded from ever being sentient. And I think on an instinctive level I disagreed with him, and then we sort of argued over years, and mainly this film comes out of that argument. I finally came across a book written by the professor of cognitive robotics at Imperial, which is like our version of MIT, and it was about the relationship between consciousness and embodiment, and he has a really sort of beautiful, elegant argument in it, which combats, I think, quite effectively some of the arguments I would hear. And so, and while I was reading that book, and I have to stress, very hard for me to read that book, and I could only read sections of it. It's like mountain climbing for me. But while I was reading that book, the idea for this film kind of arrived. So that's this funny thing about the way film works, and what it's kind of a free gift in terms of what you were talking about, in terms of that relationship with the audience, because some of these things have been well established, and then you can use them to your advantage. So in the case of this film, a smart, literate film viewer is very quickly, almost immediately, going to be thinking, she's not the robot, he is. It's just going to be an automatic assumption. They're just going to do it. And then what you can do is use misdirection and nudge them a little bit further towards that, because he's got oddly symmetrical scars on his back, which has a justification within the narrative about a car crash, but you're thinking, yeah, that's not why. And so, you know, so you use that stuff to your advantage. It's very useful. But the basic function of this film is it's intending to set up a series of questions. Some of the questions it's setting up, like where does gender reside, for example, it doesn't then necessarily have an answer to it. And in fact, it might be saying it is impossible to present a clear answer to some of these questions about consciousness or gender or AI or whatever it happens to be at this moment in time. We're not able to do that. But that doesn't negate the reason to ask the question and have the conversation. And it's basically an ideas movie. It's to provoke conversation and to hopefully do it in a sort of respectful and thoughtful way. But that said, this is an ideas movie. So I had to think through the ideas, and then I also had to test the ideas. So one of the things I did was write the script, which is semi-thinking, semi-compulsion, and then send it to various people to say, I need you to check this. I need you to look at the way this argument is presented and make sure it makes sense from your point of view. Because I think, because some of the things in the film are quite contentious, I suppose, at the very least I've got a responsibility to be thoughtful about it. The first thing I do, it's been this way on every script I've worked on since Sunshine. So not 28 Days Later, but everything since then. I open up a final draft, and I write about a page of story beats, which would be single lines. So spaceship on the way to the sun, 7 characters or 8, or I can't even remember how many there are. So it goes on. And just single lines, and the lines are the basic beats of the story. And when I've got to the end, I sort of take the cursor up to the top of the page. So I've got about a page of lines. I take the cursor back up to the top of the page, and I write the first scene. And as I reach story beats, I delete them. So eventually, the script is getting longer, and the story beats list, which is only a page, is getting shorter. Eventually I delete the last line, and at that point I've got a full script, and that's it. So that's a first draft, and it will be crap. But that's okay, because I know that there's a couple of things I get from that. One is you've got something to work with, and it's getting to that point that's often the hardest bit. And also I've done as much as I can to leapfrog the sort of treatment type stage, which and the meetings type stage, because all of this relies on it being a spec script. And the problem with treatments and the problem with meetings is other people will want to have a say, and also you can convince people of stuff in a meeting by being persuasive, and you can persuade people in a treatment by what you miss out, that something works. You can trick them, and you can also trick yourself. And the only way I know of finding out whether a script works is to write it. The funny thing is about people is that our urges to project human-like qualities into almost everything. It's almost an effort to stop it happening. I mean, there's incredibly beautiful VFX, and there's beautiful production design, and it's beautifully shot, and it's beautifully lit, and all those kinds of things. But that thing of making this strange machine, believing that it has the qualities that we have, that's actually really quite easy. That is to say, you could take it with a child who, it's probably quite hard to find children that don't attribute sentience to their cuddly toys, right, in some ways. And that's where I guess it begins. Well, in fact, it probably begins because it's sort of semi-coded into us in some respects. So initially what you do is, in a very kind of upfront way, you say, this is a machine. And there's no ambiguity, it's a machine.
Right.
And there's all sorts of things to force you to think that way. There's cavities where there shouldn't be cavities, and you can see through her in a way that sort of removes her being like us, a girl in a suit, say, And then the task of the film is to gradually have that machine quality fall away, even though she looks kind of the same, and to show just by behavior we will forget the thing that's right in front of us. I do think there is a function that science fiction can perform, which is to look at the very interesting work of people who are at the cutting edge of what's going on, but scientists, physics or theory of mind or AI or whatever it happens to be, and attempt to understand them and attempt to disseminate them, because there will be ethical issues around them, and then try to be part of that debate. I think that's perfectly true and perfectly reasonable. There is something odd happening in science, which is that I think that at the time of Newton, very roughly speaking, if you decided that what you wanted to do was apply yourself to understanding science, you'd get a good knowledge, you'd get up to speed to some degree. I don't think that's true now. I think there are lots of areas of science that are really only understood by literally a handful of people. And because some of those areas occupied by that handful of people have real ethical implications, there's something that we need to focus on and think about that. All that said, it's very, very difficult. I'm interested in science. I always have been, or I have been since my early 20s, and I hit the limit of my intellect relentlessly with it. Absolutely. I can see people in this audience who are doing this stuff, and I can't have a meaningful conversation with them about what they do. And I've read about this stuff for years, and I'm completely left behind. There's something dangerous about that, I think.
Are you a screenwriter struggling to get your story out of your head and onto the page? Then you should check out the Practical Screenwriting course. Rather than retreading old writing concepts you already know, this course focuses on the practical application side of writing, like building your focus, your habits, and consistency so that you can get to the end of your first draft. The course also shows you how to easily identify and fix those problems in your story so that you can rewrite with the confidence that you are actually making your story better, instead of haphazardly fixing different scenes, which I have done for so long. I've personally gone through this course, and it's been extremely beneficial to my writing process. It's made sitting down to write much less daunting, and I've jump-started my new screenplay because of it. The first 25 people to use the code CURTAIN at checkout will get $50 off the course. So join myself and the hundreds of other writers who have chosen to dedicate themselves to finishing the stories that they start. If you're interested in learning more, I'll have the link in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next week as we take another look behind the curtain.